Now, and I understand that you have some steps that people can take to actually heal themselves, and including past and future.
So unfulfilled desires of the soul is one way you can reconnect with yourself. And you have the ability to do that with, I find working within ourselves is the easiest, because often these traumas come up and they come up for us to heal them. And through this healing, if you're doing this in a spiritual way and you're not freaking out, you know, most of us freak out, we get a health diagnosis, we're running, screaming in the other direction. But if we just kind of slow down and just take a moment to be curious, we can start to think about, you know, what is the message that this has, and start reconnecting with ourselves. And in the process of healing yourself, if you're willing to discover other things, things will open up for you in ways that you never could imagine. And where we have a lot of our intuition is in our heart, where we've found brain tissue in the heart, and in the gut, where there's brain tissue in the gut. There's just as much brain tissue in the gut as there is in the brain. And the same neurotransmitters get sent back and forth from the gut to the brain. So some of the things we're going to talk about, what you can do, are actually nourishing your body and relieving stress, so that, because when you get stressed, your gut suffers. And if your gut is suffering, your heart suffers, because the heart needs the gut. When we were born, as in the embryo stage, and we were a cell that was dividing, this one cell divided 3 times, and it became the heart, the gut, and the brain. And the first organ to go online was the heart, then the gut, then the brain. And the heart and the brain can't function properly unless the gut is functioning properly. We know that in medicine now. So some of what I talk about, there's a lot of science behind, but there's a great amount of spirituality, because the brain tissue in your gut and your heart are intuitive brain tissue. And whenever we're trying to figure out what are the unfulfilled desires of the soul, we're looking to our heart and we're looking to our gut, those gut reactions and what our heart wants, because that's where those, I believe that they were this intuitive brain tissue was put deep into our body because it would be able to feel all of who we are and give us signals as to what it was we needed. And so reconnecting with yourself can mean eating better foods to strengthen your body and to heal your gut, because as you heal your gut, your intuition improves. It can mean meditation and journaling, because you get to know yourself better through that way. It can mean changing your lifestyle to reduce some stress. So it can mean that figuring out these unfulfilled desires of the soul, spending some time in quiet stillness, and spending more time getting to know who you really are. So reconnecting with yourself and listening for the who am I and what did I come here to do. Reconnecting with your ancestors. We'll do this in the meditation today as well. And I didn't know really how to do that in the beginning, but when I started to see that I was an echo of my ancestors in my DNA, and I started to look at the patterns that my family had and the beliefs and the things that I started to just listen without judgment. So the third bullet is remove judgment. Listen without judgment. Instead of being upset that our parents are doing X, Y, and Z, without judgment, look at those patterns. Listen to the stories that your family is telling you. You'll find out a lot of things. I started asking a lot of questions, what my grandmother's life was like, what my great aunt's life was like. I asked my parents for stories. I looked at photo albums. Go look at the old photo albums. You can reconnect with all the family stories. I actually had a great grandmother, great grandfather, and grandmother on my Native American side of my family who were put into Native American boarding schools, and children were taken away from their parents and put in these schools to help. The whole idea was to kill the Indian and save the man. Basically, they wanted to get rid of the culture, the language, my grandmother's hair was cut, my great-grandmother's hair was cut short. Everything was changed to turn these kids into more European type children, and they lost their language. And many of us have lost our indigenous or even familial languages. And in those languages are nuances that we wouldn't have imagined. Like one friend told me a story where her grandfather would say, get me my shoe. And she would say, Grandpa, why aren't you saying, get me my shoes? And he said, well, why would I ever consider that the feet are disconnected? Because in that culture, in the Pawnee culture, the feet were considered to be one unit and not a disconnected unit. And so we have these nuances in our language that don't necessarily translate into whatever language we're speaking now. So if you have a language that your parents, grandparents, or great-grandparents were speaking, that can be a great way to reconnect with your ancestors. Your dreams and your meditation time can be a way to do that as well. Going outside in nature, reconnecting with the land is a biggie, because in Native American medicine, we believe that the first 5 feet of the soil contain our ancestors. And when you step out into nature, the electromagnetic field of nature is in harmony with our human electromagnetic field. And our indigenous ancestors knew how to feel things through the land. If you have a homeland that you haven't been to, you can go to that homeland and put your feet on the ground. I have a lot, like I said, a lot of clients, the minute they put their feet on the ground, everything fell apart for them, because they were having that was their opportunity to step up and start to heal those traumas within their family. For me, when I put my feet on the ground at Standing Rock a few years ago, a time when indigenous communities were being, all of the traumas, the intergenerational traumas of indigenous communities were sort of put right in front of us at Standing Rock, because an oil pipeline was going through indigenous land, which was poisoning the water and poisoning the land. And there were a lot of other issues going on there. That's where I learned of the trauma of my great-grandparents and my grandmother in boarding schools. And I learned all the stories were coming out that none of us ever talked about growing up. And I began to understand and have compassion for patterns that I saw running through my family. But I also began to understand why I was experiencing symptoms. And as I started to reconnect to my homelands, I would go back to New York and participate in ceremony with my feet on my homelands. It was tremendously strengthening in terms of, in ways that I couldn't access from nutrition or just from lifestyle. It was a whole new form of healing. So if you can go to your homelands, that's great. If you can't, you can visualize yourself stepping on your homelands. So when I'm not on my homelands, usually I'll be imagining myself there when I'm imagining myself in ceremony. Doing your ceremonies, if you know of a ritual or a ceremony that your ancestors did, do that and just try it out. Even if you're not exactly sure how to do it, and see how you feel. Feel how you feel in your body. Just be open to what might come up for you. And then, another one is your dreams. In Native American medicine, dreams are a big deal. We share dreams. Whenever we get together in the traditional communities, we share our dreams and we talk about what we've been dreaming about. And it's one of the ways that we remember stories that have been told and things that we had done. There's a ceremony that's been recreated in one of the Haudenosaunee communities, and it's called Ohologo, and it's a rites of passage ceremony. And the whole purpose is to figure out, who am I and what did I come here to do? So imagine being in your teen years and having a 4-year rites of passage where you get deeply grounded in all your cultures and ceremony, and really learn what is different about you versus the people around you, what connects you and what makes you different. And then learning to love and appreciate and then follow who you are and what you came here to do. If we learn to do that, then that person that I described who has those stress hormones that get stuck, they would know who they were and what their gifts were and what they came here to do. And then they wouldn't be constantly trying to push themselves to do something society told them was a status-worthy career. And with your dreams, I'm a pretty practical person, so I would think that I couldn't trust my dreams, but I started having all these dreams when I started to decide I wanted to reconnect with my ancestors and getting back in ceremony. I started to pay attention to my dreams. And my great-grandmother started coming to me and performing ceremonies that I didn't understand. And so it's easy to think, if you're meditating or dreaming, that you're making it up. I would get medicines. My great-grandmother would show me medicines, and I would sometimes ask for help. And as I was going into the dream state, or as I was just waking up in that thin veil between the dream state and the waking state, and I would ask for help from my ancestor and from my great-grandmother. And one time she just put like this medicine right on me. It was a plant, and I didn't know what it was, but it was the dirt, the roots, the whole plant. And I went and started looking it up and doing research, and I found out that the plant that she gave me, when I read it, it was as if it was the plant that was specifically for me, because it hit every symptom that I was dealing with. And so I started taking a tincture of that plant, and it was resolving a lot of things. I had many other dreams. I wrote them down. And when I would go back to my community, my Haudenosaunee community, I would ask the medicine people, and I would ask people who had a closer connection to the old medicine and old rituals. And a lot of them got confirmed as rituals that actually happened. So I was having these dreams, not knowing what they were, but these dreams were actually true. And so what I've been told by a lot of the communities, indigenous communities, that we're all starting to have dreams of our great grandmothers, and that our great grandmothers are coming to us with these messages. And if we write them down and we honor them, there are going to be answers there for us.
Wow, that's just beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.